All right. Welcome to Shelf Help. Today we're speaking with Matt Borish, VP of Marketing at Union Chill Cannabis Company, cannabis retail operator with locations in New York and New Jersey, some of the most exciting markets in the country right now. Matt started his career in finance, wealth management, then had a long stint as a recording artist and actor before he ultimately kind of finding his way to leading marketing and again two of the hottest markets in cannabis. So really cool background. Excited to get into it. Yeah, Matt, the first question I had was just like, you definitely had quite a interesting journey into the cannabis space, ultimately ending up as kind of the top dog from a marketing perspective at a leading East Coast operator. Just kind of give me the highlights and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, so definitely. And first off, thanks for having me on. Really
Yeah, of course.
appreciate it. Yeah, but so I definitely have a unique background. I was a professional actor when I was younger, as a child, like from ages 9 to 13, and then ended up going kind of. I was able to remain in school during that time, which is pretty unusual. But past that point, definitely would not have been able to remain in school, and kind of wanted to, yeah, just finish out, high school and college like a normal kid. So yeah, ended up going to University of Richmond in Virginia. I majored in finance there, mostly because that's what, all of my friends seemed to be doing.
Right.
But yeah, when I graduated there, I moved out to Los Angeles and moved out there to pursue a career in music. Actually ended up working for a publishing company while starting to kind of write my own stuff, and ended up signing with them. And yeah, so lived out there doing that for about 3 years. That didn't quite pay the bills. So yeah, moved back to the Philly area and took a job in finance. And yeah, did that for about 7, 8 years, was in a couple of different cities, but ended up back in the Philly area on the East Coast, in the town where I live in now, which is New Hope in Bucks County. And I was kind of feeling pretty burnout with finance at that point, was definitely looking at, other options. I have Crohn's disease too. So cannabis has been, hugely, hugely, hugely helpful for that. I would say like life changing. Not that I didn't like cannabis before that, but definitely.
Sure.
So yeah, definitely realize like the amount of medical potential it has, and how much it helps people. And would always go into dispensaries with my wife and would say like, God, I wish I could just like work in a dispensary. And yeah, ended up meeting the founder of Union Chill. Her name was Lori McHugh. And she told me she was opening up, one of the first rec cannabis dispensaries in New Jersey. So was fortunate to kind of get a role on her team. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. She unfortunately, she actually passed away pretty suddenly in a car accident about 3 months after we opened. So that was definitely a shock. And yeah, a lot of us had to, kind of step up and continue to carry out her vision. So
Right.
yeah, it's been quite the ride, and very happy with where I ended up.
Definitely an interesting, exciting journey. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of timely that next week, as I was just saying right before we kind of hit record of this, next week is kind of like the Super Bowl for the cannabis space. Just for like the
Yep.
people that are more non-cannabis CPG world, what's just like give them the background. What is happening next week in cannabis?
Yeah. So next week is, we call it Green Wednesday. And it's actually surpassed 420, I think, as the biggest cannabis sales day of the year. I think it started just because retailers were noticing like, wow, on the day before Thanksgiving, which is, a big day for alcohol too. Everyone's coming to the dispensary. So yeah, people started offering, huge sales, and it's kind of become a tradition across the country. Yeah, that whole week, including, Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, like that's kind of the busiest week of the year for
Yeah.
us, in cannabis. It's a good time to shop if you're
Yeah.
a cannabis customer. Definitely go on
Yeah.
Green Wednesday because they have
Yeah.
the deals of the year.
Diving straight into the weeds a bit. I think what I read at your New Jersey location over a roughly like 2 year period, you helped boost revenue by almost 400%, gross profits by more than that. I think it was like close to 450%, boosted the monthly customers by similar numbers. I'm just kind of curious, what have you found are some of the keys to really consistently driving new customers, new foot traffic to your locations these days? And
Yeah.
kind of what are the big buckets you allocate the majority of resources to in order to maximize that number?
Yeah, so definitely it's Union Chill. We've had a ton of success, and I'd like to take credit for at least some of that. But yeah, so but definitely, our customers and everybody else too. But I would say in terms of marketing, I approach marketing like from a finance background, kind of very skeptically, I would say. I think as a lot of finance people look at marketing. So started out really, really focused on attribution and really focused on revenue generating marketing. So we were doing a lot of stuff that I think at the time was definitely cutting edge, at least in the New Jersey cannabis market, focusing pretty heavily on programmatic display ads, Google ads, Meta ads, just finding the right partners that were able to execute on those was definitely a big thing. And we also, when I first joined, we were with an agency and then we moved to another agency. And kind of what I found was even the ones in the cannabis space, like every market is totally different. And because we were so early on in the New Jersey market, like what had worked for their clients, maybe in other markets didn't necessarily apply to New Jersey. So kind of took things in house, started, managing and selecting marketing vendors directly. And yeah, that was definitely a huge part of the success, like cut costs by, almost a third just on the management side, keeping the budget the same and the marketing attributable returns. I would say the digital side is a big piece. The other thing I would say though is from the start, like we really wanted to be a part of the community, give back to the community, be involved as much as we could. And
Yeah.
that has certainly paid us back, over and over again. So we sponsor a lot of local events. There's a lot of, we're kind of in a big arts community. So a lot of musicals, other types of theater, art shows. We feature a lot of artists in our dispensary. And then we partner with a lot of other local businesses. So yeah, I would say those are kind of the big buckets. And then, you always have email, text, push notifications,
Right.
loyalty program. All of that stuff is definitely really, really important.
Does like budget allocation to some of those big buckets like change at all over the past few years? As an example, you're dedicating, you know, 30% of your marketing budget to programmatic performance related stuff,
Yep.
30% the community stuff, and now it's the same, or is those kind of buckets change at all?
Yeah. So there hasn't been a huge shift, but the channels within those buckets have definitely had to, change and evolve as things change. So on the digital side, we ended up finding a really, really solid partner for Meta ads. And, sometimes you find a new vendor and that can really change things about where you want to shift
Yeah.
your budget to. We also started doing like co-brand programs on the programmatic side where the brands will actually pay for the cost of the entire campaign. When people see the ad, click on it, takes them right to that brand's product page on our menu. And yeah, that had a huge effect on growth as well.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I would say on the digital side. Another thing is with Google ads, we've run into a lot of account shutdowns, things like that. That's definitely a little bit of a lower priority for us now until we can find, a vendor that can consistently execute there, which as long as Google's policies don't change, I think is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are a couple examples. Trying to think of some another thing we started doing just to, we always have to satisfy the 21 plus requirement, partnerships with a lot of local brewers, distilleries, bars where we can put our coasters in the bars. And, they'll usually say, bring this coaster in for, 20% off your first order. And that's actually in terms of like ROAS by channel, it costs us not much to make 10,000 coasters. And we typically see tens and tens of thousands of dollars just from coasters that cost a few $100s. So yeah, that's definitely they're always like, it's fun to find new things that don't think this will be like a game changer. And it turns out like, wow, this is like one of the best performing things we have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That totally reminds me when in San Francisco, when we were building the company in California, we started sponsoring trivia nights at bars that were close proximity to
That is a really
dispensaries,
good
and then
idea.
we would like integrate cannabis related questions, and that worked really well.
That's something I would like to try. That sounds like a great idea. If that's all
Yeah,
right
it worked pretty
with you.
well.
All right. Yeah.
Where do the Necessary Evil platforms kind of play in your strategy? That's like Weed Maps, main one that come to mind.
Yeah. So as far as like the iHeart Jane thing, we run both of our stores on Dutchy, POS, and Ecom. So I don't know if anything's changed on Jane's side, but I thought it was mostly limited to brands and then retailers that are using Jane, but certainly have heard really good things about that actually their program. But as far as like Weed Maps, Leafly, we found that definitely as far as like advertising on the platforms, and again, it totally depends on what market you're in, and what part of the country you're in. But for us, it's definitely our budget is usually better spent on other forms of advertising. I do think it is worthwhile. We always maintain listings on both sites. That's great for SEO and
Sure.
just to have some extra backlinks out there for your websites.
Yeah.
Definitely drives a little bit of traffic, but yeah, in terms of ad spend, we tested that a lot and didn't find a ton of value.
On the retention side, it typically seems to be like a kind of a text email campaign kind of combo, maybe some like retargeting. What have you found is the most
Yeah, so we
thing from a retention standpoint?
yeah, definitely. I would say we primarily use email. With text. There have been a lot of developments, including like the 10 DLC registration, which has actually kind of started working now, but initially that was a little tough.
Yeah.
But push notifications are another great way. We try and get as many people as we can to download our app, as many people as we can in the loyalty program. We definitely offer, I think, one of the more generous ones out there for customers, and they really appreciate that. And then retargeting in terms of digital ads is a big piece for us, and I think that's helped with our retention a lot. But beyond that, just I think we really try to pass on as we've grown, we get much better pricing from our brand partners, and we really do pass a lot of that on to the consumer.
That makes total sense. On it's kind of a similar track. I think it's kind of related to retention. The agency that I run, we work with a good number of MSOs, and some
Yeah.
of the stuff we help out with is ongoing recurring promo strategy. And it seems like we found everyone is a little bit different, but it's a really important driver.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big piece of my job, and something that, especially in the New Jersey market, for New York, they finally are just, I think as of this week, finally allowing retailers to offer discounts, which they didn't since we've been open. But yeah, New Jersey, it's a big piece of the business. We typically offer, fresh promotions weekly. I usually actually do it like bi-weekly. We'll have,
Okay.
Monday through Wednesday promos, and then Thursday through Sunday promos. We do have days of the week that are recurring every week, like
Right.
Wisdom Wednesday is a big one for us. Anyone over 55 gets 20% off on Wednesdays. We use a lot of like senior magazines to advertise that, and people clip out the coupons and come in with them. And that's, yeah, so we every day for the most part, except for Thursday and Friday, we have our weekly promos. And how we decide on what to discount in addition to that is definitely based. We've been able to improve our margin a lot from when we opened. We were gross margin, we were running at like 40 to 45%. Now we're 55 to 60%. So part of that is our purchasing power has increased, but very conscious of margin anytime we run promos. So we like to
Right.
keep things, above 50% if we can at least get keystone pricing on things. And yeah, I think we've been fortunate in that we generally have enough stuff to be able to do that with, that we can kind of consistently offer a pretty fresh promos with people,
Yeah.
which they definitely also appreciate. And then the last piece of that is expiring products. So pretty early on, we realized that that was becoming a big issue, and definitely like purchasing strategy has helped with that. But we also set up a system where 60 days out from expiration, it goes to a certain level of discount, then 45, then 30, then 15 and 5.
Yeah.
And we usually don't end up with any expired inventory at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then brand splits. If brands are offering split promos, that's the other big thing that we look at.
That helps with margin too. It seems like there's kind of like a delicate dance to a certain extent where like you want to drive business, but also kind of strategize these promos where you're not kind of at conditioning
Yeah,
consumers to kind of
exactly.
wait for promos and discounts. So they only come in when there are discounts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely another big focus. I think that's another reason why we're constantly switching around the promos. If you have something that's at 30% off all the time, then it's not really a discount. That's
Right.
the actual price for the customer.
Totally.
So yeah, it's definitely important, really important for us to be conscious of that, and switch things around. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we get around that.
Yeah. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, market compression, we're starting to see a little bit in New Jersey, and in any mature market,
Yeah.
that'll happen eventually. So
For
trying
sure.
to hold that off for as long as possible.
Yeah. It's definitely a delicate balance. What are kind of the core tools that are in your tech stack?
Yeah, so for us, we've been on Dutch EPOS and ecom since the beginning. In New York, actually, we opened under with the Dutch marketing and loyalty, which is a new product of theirs. They're still they're still developing things, but we're able to, work with Dutchy a lot and actually give them feedback on features and stuff, and they're pretty quick to implement new things. So that's definitely been an advantage up there. For the New Jersey store, we've used a couple different providers. Started out with Happy Cabbage for text and email. Had a lot of delivery rate issues early on, which I think has at this point has been fixed. But then we switched to Klaviyo for email and Happy Cabbage for SMS. That got to be kind of too much managing both of those, wanted it under one place. So we moved to Happy Cabbage. And then Happy Cabbage actually recently, there's been a lot of consolidation. They actually got bought by Alpine IQ. Our loyalty program and our app is under Springbigs. Now we're in New Jersey. Everything is under Springbig. Yeah.
That makes it easier, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. But they're definitely, it can be worthwhile, to have multiple systems.
Yeah.
Different people are good at different things, and there's definitely still a lot of that. And of course, good old Microsoft Excel is
Built out the launch plan for the New York location. A well-rounded launch plan look like for a newly opening cannabis retailer?
Yeah, so I think, and I've certainly learned a lot since opening New York as well. But I would say some things that remain consistent are in the beginning, like people don't know who you are yet. It's focusing on those, like things like programmatic display ads and everything like that. That kind of comes later once people know who you are. So definitely a ton of brand awareness stuff. I think PR is really important early on, just getting mentioned as often as possible. And then again, like partnering with other businesses, that's a great way to kind of get the word out about your store. So yeah, I would say in the very beginning, like PR brand awareness stuff is absolutely key. And when you're both before you're opening and then when you do open,
Totally.
I think as you kind of start to establish yourself, that's when, and I'm not saying we don't do any of the performance marketing stuff in the beginning, but really you have to feed that top of funnel stuff for the bottom of funnel stuff to perform really well. So yeah, I'd say that starts to shift, after your first month or two. Definitely lean more heavily into strategic partnerships, all the performance marketing stuff. And yeah, we're about 5 months in at this point in New York. And yeah, still kind of the other big thing I've learned with that is, I think this is true for any business in any industry, like every market is totally different. You can't apply the same marketing strategy. You can try it. And I think it was certainly worthwhile trying all the stuff that worked well for us in New Jersey. But I think you'll quickly find that, like, yeah, you have your customer demo is going to be completely different potentially. And yeah, the market that you're in is going to dictate a lot of what works well and what doesn't. So for anything, I think it's, a lot of cautious trial and error is a really great way to kind of see what works and what doesn't.
Cannabis is unique because it's kind of, each state is its own little market. As more and more operators come online, it gets more
Yeah.
competitive. So yeah, kind of curious, as you're building out the pro forma, how did you kind of take some of those variables into account?
Yeah. So I did the pro forma for New York, and I basically used the kind of the template that we had from New Jersey to do that. But it started by looking at your total addressable market, your segment of that addressable market, and then kind of refining from there. So really, I think a good starting point is, what are the prices currently in the market? What are people paying? And then you look at population, and there are a lot of great, data tools we use, like BDSA, headset, hoodie analytics that can kind of give you an idea before you're opening in a market, what percent of the population is actually consuming, how frequently are people buying. And then I think from there, it's a lot easier to kind of start building out the modeling. But I do think that, as we've seen in state over state over state over state, like eventually there's going to be price compression. So I think typically, at least in my experience in New Jersey and New York, we're definitely starting to see some of that in New Jersey, but not as rapidly kind of as we had expected. And then in New York, I think it's still kind of early stages, but we are seeing, the more competitors you have in a space, the more brands and the more retailers, people are going to compete on price, and that's going to drive the price down. So yeah, definitely a really important thing to keep in mind.
From a sales standpoint, what does your kind of product mix look like as of late? Meaning percentage of sales that are flower, vape, edibles, and is that drastically different between New York and New Jersey?
So in New Jersey, it's remained pretty consistent. I mean, flower is usually the biggest bucket.
Yeah.
But I will say that like vapes for our store has finally overtaken flower in New Jersey as our biggest category.
Wow.
So that's been interesting to see. I think concentrates can take a long time. I would say for any store that's opening up, like don't do half your stuff as concentrates, like because it takes a while, especially in a new market, for
Yeah.
people to realize that's where things are headed. So yeah, I would say flower and vapes are generally pretty close, usually with flower being a little higher than vapes. Pre-rolls, actually, I would say the next biggest piece are edibles and pre-rolls. Again, it kind of depends on the market that you're in, or actually like the area that you're in terms of customer preferences. And then yeah, we try and put an emphasis on, merch and accessory sales as well. We think like, if there are all these smoke shops that are able to stock like all this amazing glass and all these cool devices and tools, we're a cannabis shop. Why would we not,
Totally.
the same stuff?
THC beverages seem to be the thing that everyone's talking about. Obviously, things have changed more recently politically, but historically been sold a lot of places. And I think it's been getting a lot of attention. I'm curious, just because people can buy those other places, have you seen that trickle into your dispensary world too, of like beverages sales increased and or at least have requests for them peaked over the past,
Yeah.
I don't know, year or so?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. And so in New Jersey, there really aren't any actual canned beverages on the market yet, which is surprising. We've been expecting
Interesting.
kind of since we opened, like, all right, it's going to be soon, it's going to be soon, but still kind of no one has stepped into that space. I think a reason for that, at least in New Jersey, is because, you can get them anywhere for the most part.
Sure. Right.
I know laws have recently changed around that, and we'll see what happens over the next 12 months. But in
Yeah.
New York, that's a huge part of our edible category.
Okay.
Beverages are allowed there. They're not like the hemp derived ones, although I think people are starting to realize like there's not a big difference.
Right.
But yeah, so that's definitely a big percentage of our sales in New Jersey, New York, on the edible side. I think like as far as it like trickling down at the dispensary level, at least in New Jersey, I do think the more people that get to try the plant in any form and find it helpful for different things, like a lot of them are gonna want to explore beyond just the beverages. So
Yeah.
I think it's actually been helpful for us in a lot of ways in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Um,
Are infused pre rolls like one of the fastest growing categories in both markets for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think, a lot of cannabis consumers, especially first time cannabis consumers or in the younger demo, they sort by THC when they get to the menu. So having those infused pre-rolls on our
Yeah.
menu, like that, they're the first things that a lot of people are seeing.
For
Yeah,
sure.
there's been huge growth in that in New Jersey since we've opened, and continuing to see growth. And then it's been a big part of the market for us in New York since we've opened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consumer demographics perspective,
Mhm.
what's your consumer look like that's responsible for the bulk of your sales? And if it's different between New Jersey and New York, definitely
Yeah.
curious on that piece too.
Yeah. So in New Jersey, our dispensary is definitely in a little bit of a more affluent area. Our clientele is significantly, the average age is significantly higher than it is in Corning, New York. So yeah, and that informs a lot of our marketing as well.
Yeah.
Knowing that our biggest customer base is seniors, we cater a lot of stuff around that. And then in New York, it's definitely much of a younger demographic. We still try to get, as many people of every background as we can in the store, but definitely have the marketing's been more focused on that younger demographic
Yeah.
in New York.
Top types of products that the seniors are buying.
I would say edibles to start, but I am like always shocked by the amount of just flower that seniors buy, and a lot of times concentrates, and vapes too. I think they like to try different things and see what works best for them. But definitely initially, I think edibles are a really easy, kind of more familiar way
Sure.
for people to try the plant.
Yeah.
But one thing I think that we put a big emphasis on is start low, go slow with the edibles. I've been in a couple different other shops where, a senior comes in and they're like, yeah, try these. These are, 40 to 50 milligram edibles. And I'm like, oh my God, like, no, we try and start people on as low of a dose as possible, just so they don't have, because if you have that first experience and it's horrible, you feel overwhelmed and anxious, like you're not going to you're not going to want to do it again. You might be missing out on a lot of the
Totally.
benefits.
Any big changes in the customer demographic over the years, or has it remained pretty consistent?
In terms of the customer demographic,
Yeah.
the customer demographic has remained pretty consistent in New Jersey for us, which yeah, it's kind of unexpected. We've definitely had a lot of competition open up, but again, I just think we're so involved in the community, really doing a lot of things like food drives. We've raised over 3,000 pounds of food for local food banks. Yeah, we've had a really loyal customer base, and yeah, we're really grateful for that. In New York, since we've opened, there's been within an hour and a half radius, we now have 18 competitors. When we even 5 months ago when we opened, I think it was 14 competitors. And then you look, a year before that when we were hopefully going to be opening, it was like two competitors. So
Yeah.
yeah, both markets are growing really fast from a retail perspective.
That's awesome. That's great. This question is really getting into the weeds. Do you guys try to optimize the business at all from a 280E standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. That's another reason we, put a lot of emphasis on devices and merch and accessories for that 280E reason. Beyond that, though, it's been like the last couple years, it's been like, all right, it's about to happen. It's finally going to happen. And
Right.
so we're still hopeful that'll happen soon.
Yeah,
But
we're all very hopeful. Last question for you. In terms of any particular brands in the cannabis space or just general trends in cannabis, or maybe just CPG beyond that you've been kind of tracking lately, or things that have got you particularly excited?
yeah, I mean, I think this isn't just true for the cannabis industry, for everyone. I mean, everything that's going on with AI is exciting and scary. So that's something we've been watching pretty closely, and having to start incorporating some of that into my day-to-day work and the systems we use. So that's probably the biggest one. But as far as like things I'm excited about in cannabis in New York, they're doing a ton of really cool stuff on the edible side. That's my favorite category. And yeah, up there we have like chocolate covered waffle cones, we have freeze pops, just kind of like any edible you can think of. So the more that's something that really excites me for sure. Just seeing all these really cool edible products that are starting to enter the market. I remember a decade ago getting the like frozen pizzas and everything. So they've had that for a long time, but on the East Coast, it's definitely exciting to see.
For sure, totally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Matt, this has been awesome. You got a lot of great insights. What's the best place for people to kind of follow along with everything you're working on, and then best place for people to follow along with the Union Chill as well?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Matt Borish. You can find me on Instagram under @MattCareyMusic. Still have some stuff on Apple Music, Spotify, and everything.
Nice.
So
Perfect.
feel free to check that out.
Yeah,
And then as far as Union Chill, our website for New Jersey is www.unionchillco.co. And then our New York website is unionchillny.com. But
perfect.
you can follow our New Jersey location on Instagram. That's @UnionChillNJ. And New York is @_NY Union Chill. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
but
we'll
the
call it out
website's a
in
great
the
place to
notes.
start for both.
Yeah, we'll call this on the notes for sure. Well,
Cool.
yeah, Matt, awesome. This is awesome. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun.